What if I tell you that you can see some of Paris' most iconic landmarks without spending a single euro? Every time I visit Paris, I somehow ended up walking the same route. This walk takes me from the futuristic skyscraper of La Défense, passing through the Triumphal Arch, and all the way to the Eiffel Tower. Few cities in the world offer such an incredible journey in a single walk. And the best part, it is completely free of charge. No tickets, no tour, no transport costs. Yet, surprisingly, few travel vloggers talk about it. It is only years later that I discovered this route actually has a name. The French call it the historical axis. Today, I will show you why this may be the most underrated free activity in Paris. Okay, just check out. This Paris adventure actually starts 900 kilometers away and 1,000 meters above sea level. In Andorra La Vella, the highest capital city in Europe. This morning, I am walking back to the same bus stop that dropped me off yesterday. I will take the earliest bus leaving Andorra and heading back to Toulouse. The journey is a complete backtrack of how I arrived in this country. At first, I thought I can sleep through the entire ride. But after the heavy downpour last night, the landscape looks completely different. The mountains are now covered with a fresh blanket of snow. Perhaps God answered my prayer and showed me what Andorra really looked like in winter. The scenery is absolutely stunning. It looks nothing like it does yesterday. The bus crosses the border, passes through a series of tunnels, and slowly descends from the Pyrenees into the plains below. With the rain gone and patches of blue skies appearing, the countryside looks incredibly lush and green. I guess the temperature is now in the high teens Celsius, making the journey back even more pleasant. I am back at the bus terminal in Toulouse. Without wasting any time, I head straight to the train station next door. It is the whole cycle of train travel logistics once again. Arriving at the train station, checking the departure board, and booking the next available train. I still have about an hour before departure.
Yes, merci.
So I leave the train station to grab a takeaway meal for 8 euros. With food in hand, I rush back just as my train arrives. I find my seat and immediately start on the burger meal I buy earlier. For I'm not sure how my stomach would react on a speeding train. And besides, I'm hungry. I finish the meal before the train even starts moving. With this leg of the journey, I'm now clocking 2,084 kilometers on rail since leaving Zurich. And after spending less than 24 hours in Andorra, I am already moving north once again. Today is day 7 of my journey, and I'm almost halfway through the trip. My objective is simple: travel as far north into Europe as possible. I need to make up for the lost time I explore Western France. I take a walk to the TGV buffet car to see what is available. Most of the items on sale are snacks and light meal. The prices are not as frightening as I expect, but I still need to keep a close eye on my budget. For now, the only thing that is completely free is the scenery outside the train window. While checking train reservation, I realized that almost all the high-speed trains and TGV services heading north are fully booked today and tomorrow. That means the furthest north I can get to today is wherever this train takes me, Paris. Apart from a stop in Bordeaux, the train continues for almost 5 hours towards the French capital. During the journey, I booked 2 nights accommodation and, more importantly, starting planning my next move after Paris. To be frank, solo free and easy travel is not easy at all. I always keep a list of possible routes and destinations, ready to adapt depending on what tomorrow brings. Like I always say, tomorrow will worry about itself. I arrived at Paris Gare Montparnasse. I love the feeling of returning to a familiar city. For a while, I can switch off my brain and simply go through the motions. There is something satisfying about stepping out of the train station with confidence. Heading straight for the metro, buying a ticket from the automated machine. This time, I even used the French menu instead of English.
Sorry.
Almost as natural as using the ATM machine back home. I navigate the maze-like metro tunnels like a local. I make the train interchange without hesitation. Then, I emerge from the train station and walk towards my hostel without looking at the map. It feels almost like walking home. This kind of simple moments brings a smile on my face, especially after a tiring day of travel. I booked the Generator Hostel in Paris once again.
Bonsoir. I have a reservation.
Besides being kind to my budget, it is almost 11 p.m. I'm simply too tired to do anything else. I drop my bags, climb into bed, and call it a night.
The next day,
I am totally famished, and the hostel buffet for less than €10 feels like a godsend. As I eat, I'm still unsure what to do next. Do I spend a few hours in Paris, or do I continue pushing north and leave the city behind? Then a thought suddenly comes to me.
Good morning from Paris. Okay, I've just done my checkout. Now heading to my destination.
My last trip to Paris is more than 20 years ago. How many 20 years period does one really get in a lifetime? And what if it turns out to be my last visit to Paris? That thought is frightening. So I make a decision. I will spend the next few hours in Paris as if they are my last. I remember what I do on my first trip to Paris more than 30 years ago. Why not do it again? This time, with my backpack on my shoulder, I start walking aimlessly while thinking. By the time I make up my mind, I find myself near Gare Magenta. I enter the station. The design of the subway station immediately catches my attention. It feels like a modern art museum than a subway train station. The orange lighting stretches across platform and continues along the line. Even the trains are orange. Every detail seems intentional. Every detail seems to have a purpose. This train takes me to the starting point of my walk. La Défense. The station at La Défense feels surprisingly modern. From its design, it almost feels as if it has only been built in the last few years. As I ride the escalator up from the underground station, I catch my first glimpse of the Grand Arche through the opening above. That moment moves me. More than 30 years ago, I stood here for the very first time. Back then, the clean lines and futuristic architecture leaves a huge impression on me. At a time when such modern designs are far less common than today, La Défense back then feels like a glimpse into the future. The image stays with me all these years. For many people, Paris means Eiffel Tower. For me, Paris is synonymous with La Défense. The last time I stood here, I was a young man. Today, I am an old uncle. As I walk around La Défense, I try to recall as much as I can from more than 30 years ago. Let's start with the main attraction of this district, La Grande Arche. Completed in the year 1989 to mark the 200th anniversary of the French Revolution, this giant cube-shaped structure served as the modern counterpart to the Triumphal Arch. And the amazing thing, the Triumphal Arch sits almost 5 kilometers away in a straight line. You can actually see it from here once you climb up the stairs. Where I'm standing at the Grand Arch is the enormous hollow space carved out in the center. The entire structure stands about 110 meters tall and 110 meters wide. The central void is so huge that the entire Notre Dame Cathedral can fit inside it. Just imagine that for a moment. It is absolutely mind-blowing. The shopping malls around La Défense feels like any modern mall. Nothing particularly special. There are a few outdoor arts installations scattered around the district. There are also some newer buildings that definitely do not exist when I first came here decades ago. Still, my attention keeps returning to the arch. Before moving on, I take one last look. From here, my route is simple. Walk straight, 5 kilometers. Behind me stands La Grande Arche. Ahead of me stands the Triumphal Arch. The air is cool and comfortable, although the sun can still be surprisingly harsh at times. Fortunately, there is more to see along this route than just two arches. As I continue walking, the scenery keeps changing. At some stretches, I find myself walking through broad boulevard lined with beautiful manicured trees. The greenery provides a welcoming break from the glass and concrete of La Défense. What surprised me more is the complete lack of tourists. I do not see any tourists at all. Most visitors to Paris travel from one attraction to another using the efficient metro system. Traveling by metro is faster. It is more convenient. But in my opinion, they are missing the best parts of Paris. On the other side of the bridge begins the famous Avenue Charles de Gaulle, the long straight boulevard leading directly towards the Triumphal Arch. The sun is starting to feel a little intense. So I step into a church along the avenue to enjoy some shade and a few moments of peace. Just 2 blocks away from Avenue Charles de Gaulle lies something I do not expect to find: Bois de Boulogne. Covering more than 800 hectares, this enormous park is one of the largest green space in Paris. I continue along Avenue Charles de Gaulle. By this point, the Triumphal Arch is getting noticeably closer. For the first time, my camera can properly capture its details. The closer I get, the faster I seem to walk. Soon, I reach the giant roundabout where the Triumphal Arch stands proudly in the middle. Even though this is far from my first visit, the sight still touches my heart. Some landmarks never lose their magic. Like a devoted fan returning to see an old idol, I walk around the monument, filming it from every possible angle. Each site seems to reveal something new. Only after I'm satisfied with my photos and video do I make my way towards the monument itself. The Triumphal Arch sits on the traffic island in the middle of one of Paris' busiest junctions. And trust me, do not even think about crossing the road at the street level. You will have to navigate multiple lanes of fast-moving traffic. Instead, follow the signs and use the pedestrian underpass from the outer edge of the roundabout. As I enter the underpass, I immediately spot a long queue of visitors waiting to buy tickets to the rooftop. The ticket costs around 20 euros during the peak season. Fortunately, I am not particularly interested in going up. For me, seeing the monument up close is already enough. So I skip the queue and head straight to the traffic island. The moment I emerge from the underpass, the Triumphal Arch stands directly in front of me. Now, this is a view television can never properly convey. Standing 50 meters tall, this monument is far larger than most people imagine. This is roughly the height of a 15-story building. Only when standing beneath it do I truly appreciate its scale. Commissioned by Napoleon in the year 1806, the Triumphal Arch honored the soldiers who fought and died during the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars. Construction takes nearly 30 years. Sadly, Napoleon never lived to see his masterpiece completed. The four giant pillars of the Triumphal Arch are decorated with enormous sculptures, depicting victories, battles, and important moments in the French history. To be honest, it is a little too much history for me to absorb in a single visit. So instead of trying to understand every details, I simply walk around and admire the craftsmanship. Sometimes it is enough just to appreciate the beauty of the place. Beneath the Triumphal Arch lies the tomb of the unknown soldiers, where the eternal flame burns continuously here, honoring French soldiers who lost their life in the war. Now I continue eastwards. After La Défense and Triumphal Arch are completed, time for me to head towards my third checkpoint, Champs-Élysées. This is a household name. Even people who have never been to Paris have heard of it. Champs-Élysées is not just one of the famous streets in Paris. It is one of the most famous shopping avenues in the world. Fortunately, I do not have to walk very far from the Triumphal Arch. I simply use the same underpass once again to cross the roundabout. And I arrive at the western end of the Champs-Élysées. As expected, every major international luxury brand seems to have a presence here. And of course, there are also the French brands that have become household names worldwide. Louis Vuitton is probably one of the most famous of them all. Its flagship store dominates the street. The building itself is impressive, wrapped in a giant metallic Louis Vuitton monogram, and it is impossible to miss. Any Louis Vuitton fan would probably be excited just standing outside. Ironically, when I was much younger, I actually buy wallet from this very store. Now that I'm older, brand name do not mean very much to me anymore. But still, seeing the long queue outside brings back memories of a younger version of myself. Personally, I find Longchamp a little more interesting. Longchamp flagship store is also located just a short distance away. Perhaps the brand feels less intimidating and a little more approachable. In any case, this entire stretch of Champs-Élysées represents the A-list of the A-list when it comes to shopping. Across the streets stands Galeries Lafayette. There is one thing I completely forgot to visit is the rooftop terrace. The terrace offers a fantastic view of both the Triumphal Arch and the Eiffel Tower. And best of all, it is completely free of charge. Unfortunately, I was so focused on keeping track on time that it slips my mind. Oh well, a small regret for this trip. I think I have enough of shopping for me today. The window shopping, of course. It is now time for me to continue towards River Seine. Honestly, the best part of Paris is not always found on the main boulevard. It is often the smaller streets branching off the main road. This is where Paris starts to feel like Paris. The cafe, the restaurants, the neighborhood atmosphere all depict the everyday life of the locals. If you really want to experience Parisian culture, sometimes the best thing to do is simply just to leave the main streets and wander off the small alleys. River Seine is one of the must-do experience in Paris. River Seine in Paris is even designated as a UNESCO World Heritage in the year 1991. I just did River Seine about a few days ago near the Notre Dame de Paris. Now, about 5 kilometers away from Notre Dame, the River Seine embraced another icon of Paris, and arguably one of the most famous landmarks in the world, the Eiffel Tower. I cannot stress enough how much Paris should be explored on foot. The landmarks are so visible that it's surprisingly hard to get lost. The Eiffel Tower stands at the left bank while I'm currently walking on the right bank. There are several bridges crossing the River Seine, but I chose Passerelle Debilly Bridge. While this bridge may not be the closest bridge to the Eiffel Tower, this bridge is pedestrian only, which makes it safer and more pleasant for photography. And the views from here are worth it. On one side of the bridge, I catch a glimpse of Ile de la Cité. On the other side of the bridge, the Eiffel Tower rises into the sky. Now, I am on the left bank, and my goal is simple. Walk towards the Eiffel Tower. In just less than 50 meters from the Eiffel Tower, I stumble upon a pop-up food market. I am not sure whether it is part of any festival or any seasonal event, but the atmosphere feels lively and festive. The food sold here looks authentic, and considering the location, the prices are surprisingly reasonable. There is one part of me wants to sit down immediately and enjoy a proper meal here. But there is another part of me who wants to finish covering all my destinations first before taking a break. This is the funny thing about solo traveling. Sometimes I think a travel companion would be useful just for the moments of basic logic. Anyway, the Eiffel Tower is only a few steps away from where I'm standing now. Let me push on and complete the final checkpoint of this walk. The Eiffel Tower. This is probably the third time I'm seeing it in person. Yet somehow, this place feels a little different from what I remember the last time I was here. Back then, the area around the Eiffel Tower feels more open. But these days, security is noticeably tighter. There is glass barrier surrounding the complex, and visitors have to pass through security screening before getting close to the Eiffel Tower itself. I have also read plenty of warnings about scams operating around this area. So I keep things simple. No conversation with anyone, no unnecessary interaction, not even eye contact. After passing through the back security checks, I enter in what seems to be a landscape park surrounding the Eiffel Tower. This is completely new to me, and I do not remember any of this form from my previous visit. And then suddenly, there it is. The Eiffel Tower stands right in front of me. The Eiffel Tower was built to celebrate 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. Now, I'm standing directly underneath. No matter how many photos or video I have seen, nothing quite prepared me for the scale of the structure. Around me, several queues from beneath the tower, each leading to different levels above. But honestly, this queue does not concern me. I have already gone up Eiffel Tower more than 30 years ago. And once is just enough. This time round, I am perfectly happy staying on the ground and appreciate it from below. One thing I enjoy watching is the elevators. They slowly climb the iron framework towards the upper level. Compared to the modern lifts, they move at a more leisure pace, and that somehow only adds to their charm. There is a nostalgic, almost retro feeling to them. I also like the landscape garden surrounding the Eiffel Tower. The pond, the trees, the open green spaces. This gives the entire area a much calmer atmosphere than I remember. And perhaps more importantly, the controlled access helps keep away many of the scammers and aggressive vendors. Hustlers and unwanted distraction that used to be common around these tourist hotspots are no longer there. As a result, the whole experience feels more organized and peaceful. I am now out of Jardins de la Tour Eiffel, or simply I call it the Eiffel Tower enclosure. From here, I walk onto Pont du Nord, that iconic bridge directly in front of the Eiffel Tower. If my memory serves me well, cars used to be able to use the bridge. That no longer seems to be the case now. As soon as I leave the protected zone around the Eiffel Tower, the atmosphere changes. There are more people, more distractions, and according to many travel advisories, a higher chance of encountering scammers and pickpockets. So I keep my belongings closed and stay aware of my surroundings. It is no secret that this is one of the best places in Paris to photograph the Eiffel Tower. My destination is Jardins du Trocadéro. From here, the Eiffel Tower almost stands at eye level across the river. The distance is just right, and you can capture the entire structure without having to tilt your camera too much. That is why so many of the classic Eiffel Tower photographs are taken from here. Like the area around the Eiffel Tower, I have read plenty of warnings about scams and petty crimes around Jardins du Trocadéro. But so far, everything seems perfectly normal. Perhaps it is simply a matter of staying alert and using common sense. Today, I have a much simpler mission. Just to get the best Eiffel Tower photograph as much as possible. Sometimes travel does not need to be complicated. Sometimes it is just enough to stand in front one of the world's most famous landmarks and keep pressing the camera shutter buttons. And with Eiffel Tower standing proudly in the background, this is exactly what I did. There is a metro station nearby that takes me directly to Gare du Nord. This is Paris' main gateway to northern France and northern Europe. Before leaving Paris, I am enjoying a well-deserved Burger King meal. And more importantly, it gives me a chance to recharge all my electronic equipment. With a full stomach and fully charged batteries, I head back to the train platform. All the TGV services are fully sold out. So my option now is to take the regional train that is covered by my U-Rail train pass. At this point, I am not too concerned about where I exactly end up at the end of the day. I just need to keep moving north and get out of France. If you enjoy this kind of spontaneous solo travel, please give this video a like, leave a comment and subscribe to follow my journey across Europe. The next time you see me, I will be in another European country. Merci beaucoup. This is Uncle Go Traveling and I see you in the next adventure.